director is going to be. All right? And they become the hiring authority. And they determine who comes on the respective different police departments, all right, through their process. There's two different processes. One is civil service, and the other one is called under Title 40, which is known as a chief step. So there's some variation, but at the end of the day, as a hiring officer, you have to justify, of course, if you don't pick someone. The police and the prosecutor's office, have the local police and the prosecutor's office have an incestuous relationship. What do I mean by that? Is that they depend on each other to make their cases. Now, I know some great prosecutors, all right? But don't be naive. That's the minority, all right? In my opinion, all right? There are some great investigators, some honest, and some very good, actually, one of them right here, from that's the county prosecutor's office. But you can be in Essex County and be picked up on a particular crime. Totally different outcome than if you're in Hunterdon County. Just recently in Hunterdon County, they were prosecuting a young man, one was 17, the other was 18, for having a toy gun. They charged him with possession. Now, his mother has to go out, first of all, get about $15,000 for a retainer, which she doesn't have. All right, in the meantime, now he goes through the system, so if he wants to go get a job later on in life, now he's got to explain why he had that on his record, even if hopefully he's exonerated. You know, it's such a bizarre case. But we have to be very active. They're passing laws every day in the state of New Jersey. We brought all of the pressure to bear to make sure they had an independent prosecutor's bill in the state of New Jersey. What does that mean? That means if there's a law enforcement encounter and the actual individual involved in that encounter winds up dead or subsequently is dead, even if they're in custody, that case now has to be reviewed or taken control of by the Attorney General's office. It used to say they may. The Attorney General always had the authority to do that in the state of New Jersey. But now it says you shall. That came about by advocacy. Groups like mine, NOBLE, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, NAACP, other civic-minded people, we went down to the Speaker's office, the Speaker of the Assembly's office, because he didn't want to post a bill. All right? We made sure that he posted that bill. So we have to leverage the power that we have. All of us in this room has power, and you know, I know we don't have that much more time, but I can't implore enough that, you know, we have to be involved in the process. You know, and like Shirley Chisholm said, she said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. You have to demand your rights. You got to get your rights. Not only with this. In 1965, right here in Newark, they had a young boy who played in the street. We all played in the street. We didn't have nowhere else to play. We couldn't go too much further than your step when I was growing up. The parents said, don't leave that step. So we played in the street right in front of the house. And unfortunately, he was hit by a car, struck by a vehicle, and he was killed in an accident. And they went down to City Hall. They tried to pressure the city government to put up a traffic light at that intersection. Didn't happen. All right? They continued to pressure and subsequently eventually got a stop sign at that intersection. They continued to pressure. I mean, they were given all kinds of stories. We need a survey, which is true. We need the state to approve it, which is true. All right? But that process, they never even entered into that process, but they were telling the vote. Fortunately, enough people stayed on the issue and they subsequently got traffic light there. So things just don't happen. We're going to have to make them happen. And it's only through activism that you'll see different results.
That's so important that people be engaged in the process. One person can't do it by themselves. Sometimes you can. People are annoyed by you and still get you out of their hair. But for the most part, we have to be engaged. And I know one of the things I'm really about is civics, because I know they took it out of school for a purpose, to make sure people didn't know how to make government accountable. So that's one thing too. If you can go to the internet now, you don't have to have a class. You can go get a podcast on civics. Mr. Thomas, that's what he said. All right, you're going to wrap it up, Mr. Pennington.
You know, I appreciate everything that was said, that the commissioner just mentioned. It makes a lot of sense. There's great unity individual level. Like I said earlier, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And what I have to say individually to the actual suspects and defendants and things like that, I'll tell them the same thing that I told the mother of a young man who kept on getting in trouble and kept coming to see me. So eventually she says, please tell me, what can my son do to avoid all this? And I luckily just learned that what was on my mind. I said, tell him to quit breaking the law. I mean, seriously. So we as family members, as parents, and members of the community need to impress that upon these kids too. It's not a game, it's not a joke. Quit breaking the law. But if you do, okay, fine. Try to instill responsibility and teach them to be in the right place at the right time, as I said earlier. Be where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to do. I'm not going to say it's going to guarantee you that you'll never get arrested, but it will lessen the chances you get arrested. There's no doubt about that. And then if you are arrested, remember, the police officers, they're human beings. They have good days, they have bad days. They have good police officers, they have bad police officers. Don't say insulting things. Don't irritate them, don't aggravate them. Don't tell them, I have my right, because you know what? You one up them, they'll one up you. Guess what, too? They got a gun and a badge and a pen to write complaints and summonses. So, be respectful. Give them your basic information. However, as I said also, once they actually start questioning you about the event that you're being charged with or accused of, you have the right to remain silent. Do not talk about the charges at all. You have the right to be represented by counsel. Wait until you have a lawyer sitting here next to you. And they're supposed to cease questioning you at that point. And if they continue questioning you about, that's where I come in, I get that suppressed in the motion we talked about earlier. So be respectful, remain silent, and again, I said, when I come in, I can't come in unless somebody comes and gets it. You gotta retain a lawyer. Don't sit around and wonder and wait, or I'll go and see what happens in court first, and then if I need a lawyer, then I'll call someone. Sometimes by the time you wait around and call me, it may be a little bit too late. So as soon as you can, get good legal counsel. All right, thank you, I appreciate this opportunity.
I'm so happy to have you guys, just be willing to come out and do this for free.
As a prosecutor, I can't take any payment, so yes.
What I wanted to say, Mr. Pennington, Mr. Thomas, Commissioner Shipp, Narline, Casimir, I want to give them all a round of hand. I hope the people in Facebook land really appreciate this, and I know it'll be available on the North Public Library website, and also the images, the one of police station, which was really helpful, Mr. Shipp, go through that. That was really helpful. And the other one with the flow chart, that they'll be available for the public to be able to reference at other points. So, I want to thank all of you for coming out, so give yourselves a hand. I know it didn't hurt that it was hot outside and it's air conditioning. So I so appreciate it. We tied it up a little later than we wanted to. We don't want to take advantage of people's time. So I so appreciate you all coming. I hope this is very helpful, that you'll share the information with people in the public, particularly young people, so they'll have this information. So the whole idea is, what can we do to keep people from having that same drama? And to the extent you have people willing to come out on their own time to give time to the public, people don't even know what the word public means anymore. They want everything is monetized, right? So this is just great to have this kind of information. So,
Question.
oh, good. Oh yeah, there's some questions. I have to do that.
I just want to say one thing very quickly, and then we'll go to questions, I guess. Down the part of it now. Our website for Noble is noblenj.org. That's for the state website. And then we have a national website, Noble, NOBLE.NATL, abbreviation for national. On that website, you can go to that website and you can connect with us anytime you want us to come out to any community, civic association, any nonprofit, sorority, fraternity. We will come out. We have a program called The Law and You. And it's basically geared towards young people between the age of 13 to 18. And it basically educates them on what's their rights as well as what's their responsibilities if they interact with law enforcement officers. So I wanted to make that available to you all.
That's really helpful, and I did want to take a couple of questions. So that question. Yes, Juan, what's your question?
My question is, should the young people who stay in school, don't get a bus, say no to bus?
So you were actually giving us recommendations.
Well, I always tell people, the best way to stay out of trouble is never get into it from the beginning.
Right. Ms. Montague, you have a question?
Ms. Bennett. Yeah, thank you. Two questions. What you said about the educational piece, I think is really critical. I know that they're implementing at least in the East, or is there anything that the community wants to do to get those types of programs into the South and West, where more urban communities where I think it's really needed in a for her. She mentioned earlier that after the 90-day period, that they can let the person go. We're right now currently following a case in Mississippi where the robbery was a case where after 90 days that young man was not let go.
Is he federal?
No, that's right, that's a,
Oh, okay.
right.
Okay.
That makes sense. That's all I wanted to know, what determines the can, like what are the 90 days?
She's asking, what happens after 90 days if they don't pursue you?
So what happens, after 90 days, the person is released. That's it. That is what happened. But there are things that happens between that can all the time. So if the defendant files a motion, or it's an application to drug court, sometimes defendants don't want to appear in court. So that delays the 90 days. But there's no other recourse but for that defendant to be released. And that's a position that prosecutors don't want to be in, especially when it is the person is charged with violent offense.
Ms. Bay? Did Ms. Bay?
Yeah, thank you so much for allowing me. And thank you to both of you invited me, that's what happened. And it was very enlightening in all of you tonight, but I was wondering if the program that they had for years at, I think, Walmart, Scared Straight, is that still in existence?
No, that's not. That's not in existence.
I hadn't heard
They think it's too rough for young people now. I was actually working out there at the time when they had it back in the early 80s. And it wasn't effective program. The only problem with that is, after they did an analysis of it also, is that, that one-shot factor, it needs to be something that's more sustainable, that's going to stay with that person. And once they leave that experience, they, you may get a breakthrough with some, but overall,
Well, just real quick about, it had to be about 15 years ago, I don't know how long it's been extinct, but we took, a group of us, when we had our organization, we took our nephews and sons down to Gloucester, and we planned a whole day, and after they went through that whole piece of, throwing them in the jail, the whole thing, we took them to dinner, right? It was 14 of our sons and nephews, and only one, and my heart goes out to one, but he's okay now, but, actually went on this crime and did time.
Yes.
But that program was absolutely magnificent. It really was, and I really enjoyed all of you tonight.
Yes, Mrs.
Can I just add, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I know everyone here probably votes, but we have to emphasize to people, even if it's for dog catcher, vote for the dog catcher. Because everyone who gets elected sets policy, hires judges, appoints judges, votes for Superior Court judges. Anyone who has any political power should be vetted by us. And I know Commissioner Shipp really focused on that and saying, be involved. But if you're not even going to the polls or vote, you're really not involved. So we have to emphasize to everybody that they don't just have to vote because people die for you to vote. People got, dogs sick on the vote. That's not the whole point. The whole point is without a vote, we don't have a voice. And we have to have a voice. Again, even if it's for dog catcher up to president,
what you're voting for, because all of your skin folk ain't necessarily your kinfolk, if you know what I mean. All right, because we have some people right in this county that we fought hard to make sure that body-worn cameras were in place. Believe it or not, they got involved and rolled back all of the policies that we had put in place, so we weakened it now. So you know who you're voting for.
Mr. Thomas, on the federal level, what's the difference between a magistrate and a judge?
Sure. A United States District Court judge is nominated and appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate, just like KBJ was. She was a district court judge. A magistrate judge, they are appointed by the district court judges and for a term of 7 years. So they're both federal judges. One is just appointed by United States District Court judges, and the other one is appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate.
Question?
Yes, I have a question. I would like to know if you're charged with a federal crime, and you did your time, you made it to society, is there any way that type of record can be expunged?
Absolutely not. The only federal record that can be expunged is under these limited circumstances. You have to be under 21 at the time of the offense, and it has to be a misdemeanor. So that's the only thing. And if I could just add to the comment that you made with regards to taking those young men to Scared Straight and tying in with what I would suggest to the community. One of the things, and this may sound weird, one of the things that I would suggest is perhaps take a group of, I believe that every, whether it's freshman or sophomore male, should be taken to either West Point or Naval Academy. I took my son there, and you know, I can't, I wish, I felt that I was deprived in high school, and had I known about West Point, I grew up in Jersey City, went to Steiner High School in Jersey City. Had I been exposed to the military academy, I probably would have gone. I had intellect in high school, and somehow in college, intellect was escaping, and God knows what I was doing, but I'm here, right? So I think from a community perspective, if you can either contact West Point or contact the Naval Academy, I think they're probably paying for the bus or the tour up there, and you'll be chaperoned by a captain, and it's a very nice place to go, and a very inspiring place for, I believe, for young men. And Kim Deal set up.
We have a question from Charlotte, and then we're going to
I would just like for someone to speak on serving on the grand jury. I did it for 19 weeks and a regular jury. And what I find is that since it was in Essex County, the majority that were on the grand jury were white. We had so many black people giving excuses why they couldn't serve. And then a lot of the cases were black people. And so, you know, and the first thing you know, I don't have time. So, you don't have time, you're part of the problem. And I was reforming, and that was one experience. If anybody knows me, I said what I had to say. Thank you.
And I've been trying to serve, they just keep rejecting me. Sorry, I tried.
Yeah, serving on a jury is fundamental. People, last week or the week before, we celebrated the 4th of July. People have a hot dog, a hamburger, and beer, but they don't want to serve on jury duty. And that's in grand jury is so critical to your civic participation. So, I think we have 2 more questions. 2 more questions. Dr. Phillips said I didn't only have this question, just real quick, because the question that I asked was answered. He said something that was so important, he said this she
Made it
said,
myself.
yeah, but she said, the civics are not being taught, so the kids are not getting that message in the school. They're not getting any messaging about any of this. So there's such a gap in terms of information that the young people are getting, and I just don't know what we can do, and I would like to know what we can do to change that. I would just say, in terms of education process, going back to voting, and the school board is fundamental, because that determines who's gonna, what the curriculum's gonna be, who the individual is going to have the contract to pick up tampons. That determines who the book authors are gonna be. Are we gonna get books that are okay in Texas? Right? So the book company, whether or not Mary Rocker's book is in the school system. There's some fundamental things should be in the school system, and it starts with voting at the school board level. And that's where most people are turn out, but that has the most impact. And in the Maasai tribe in Africa, they say, how are all the children when they greet? They don't say hello, hi. How are all the children? And if the children are not fine, our society is not fine.
And if I may add, I don't know if you can hear me, if I may add, yes, Linda, if I may add to what, to answer this, I'm sorry, ma'am, to answer your question, with this program, it's going to be posted on the library's website. I would suggest maybe sharing it with, if you have sons and or daughters, nieces, nephews, you can share it with our friends. And the timeline can be shared also. It is in color, there are words, specific words that they will see that will hopefully pique their interest, and they will go on doing their own research and sharing what they learned with their friends. So that's one way of passing on the knowledge to you.
It's already on Newark Public Library's Facebook page.
Exactly.
It's already on the Newark Public Library's Facebook page. We will add to the Newark Public Library's YouTube page and also to the webpage for the James Brown African Americans. We have 3 opportunities to review and share.
And share,
We have to
share.
take 2 more questions.
Okay, and then we're gonna tie up some more.
Actually, about the probable cause hearing, they don't have that no more to do with arraignment. Okay, you get arraigned and probable cause, there's no specific.
I'm sorry, you
I can answer that question regarding the probable cause hearing.
What did you answer, Narline? I'm sorry.
So, I know that there was a question regarding probable cause. If someone doesn't speak on the microphone, I can't hear them.
I was saying, did you get the prosecutor to do away with the probable cause hearing at the initial arraignment? If they had to request that, or just get away with it and go straight to the judicial process?
No, so the probable cause, there is a probable cause hearing at the time of the detention hearing, right? So if the person is arrested, they go to court for their, for CJE. If the prosecutor filed a motion to detain that person, before arguing for the motion to detain, the prosecutor has to argue for probable cause. But probable cause is a very low standard. It is not the same as proving the person guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So, but there is probable cause hearing that is done, and if that threshold is met, then the prosecutor argues for detention. And again, probable cause will be put at issue before the grand jury. And one thing that I mentioned the 90 days to indict, but if the indictment occurs too close to that 90 days, defense counsel can also move for probable cause hearing. Many prosecutors probably will not be happy that I just said that, because a lot of defense attorneys forget that again they can argue for probable cause hearing at that point. But if it's within 2 weeks of the 90 days, there can be a probable cause hearing.
That is not always applicable to everyone, and I can testify that. My name is Mr. Kirby, the name of my book, I'm on the state number after doing time. My question to everyone is, how do you get our traumatized kids to buy into trusting a system again that they believe has constantly failed because of their parents, their grandparents? So we're talking about kids doing all these things, but they don't trust y'all. I'm out here with the kids every day. Thank God I went through the system and came out, was able to turn it around and get them to listen. But I'm listening to the lack of respect, the other things that they're going through with the trauma, being traumatized. And when you talk about the 90-day thing, that is on a case-by-case basis. And I can honestly say that as the person who did time in the system. So I know all the ins and outs of the prosecutory way that they move, and some people are misled by that. And I can honestly say this as a young man who's out here in the community trying to get the people to change, especially our youth. But our youth are traumatized. They're traumatized by their mothers and their fathers being in the prison system. So and you say, to go change your areas. You say change the areas and the location and take them to a naval base and all this other stuff. Where's the funds for this? There's no funds in this community for that. And what's going to get them to go to a naval base when all they see around them, you can't change your community of poverty, what you're living in as a kid. So you subject to when you come out the door, this is what I see. Either I'm going to be part of it or I'm going to be the victim. So how do we bridge that gap? When there was the light school, I was there. So I know about the light school very well. How do we bridge the gap? We talk these things as adults who've been through it, but the kids, how do we get them to buy in to this is what you need to do? Like, okay, I'm not gonna call a lawyer when I need a lawyer because our communities just don't have it. So what do we get? A public, as they say, pretender. That's what we label it. So so if we're gonna be real and transparent, how do we get our youth to buy into it? All the prosecutors are not bad. All the police are not bad. Just like you said, and that's a fact. It's good and bad in everything. How do we get our youth, our traumatized youth, to buy into this so we won't have so many meetings and things of how to deal with our youth? How do we get them to buy it and bridge that gap? That's what's needed. Bridging the gap so they will trust again and believe that every officer is not a bad officer. Every prosecutor is not here to sit away for the rest of their life, and now they're even more traumatized when they're in the system. So
let me answer that question since you hinted to the fact that everybody can go to West Point or Naval Campus. I believe you walked in after the final question was asked as to what comments do we have with regards to the community, and you missed all of our response. The young lady here brought up the fact that she took 14 individuals to a prison, and before she asked that question, she talked about, she directed a question to Commissioner Shipp with regards to the Scared Straight program. What I thought what she did was a phenomenal idea of taking the individuals that she mentored to a prison. As she said that, I harken back to the fact that when I took my 9-year-old to West Point, and as I went through, and I'm talking about my own personal experience, as I walked through the campus of West Point, being guided by an African-American captain and watching white soldiers salute him throughout our walk, right? I felt, as a black man being deprived in high school of knowing anything about West Point, and I learned about West Point in college. So what I suggested was that perhaps you all, one thing to do as a community outreach, and it was a suggestion, one thing to do as a community outreach is to contact West Point and see if they can sponsor a bus to bring kids up there. Who knows whether one would be inspired, but I'd rather inspire one than to lose that particular one. So that's how you do it. You know, you reach one at a time. look, there's no global solution to anything that we have to do. And I think what you're looking for is a global solution. When you find that global solution, please contact me. I will leave my job. We could patent it and we could make millions of dollars. But there isn't any global solution to the problem that we face daily with regards to mass incarceration and the colorization of the criminal justice system.
I was gonna say that's for a whole other day.
Just very quickly, if I can say also too, around 76, there was a surge in violence in urban communities. And I would submit that came about behind the fact that the economics from those communities left. You used to manufacture everything, Newark, Elizabeth, Trenton. Matter of fact, Trenton used to have to sign, they still have to sign up, Trenton makes the world takes. Once they stripped those communities of all of those employment opportunities, crime rates went up. So it goes back to socioeconomics. We concentrate a lot on the after versus in the beginning. Okay, so until we deal with the socioeconomic structure that is in this country, we're going to continue to have crime. Because people want to eat. Now, if they got to rob, steal, or kill to do it, it's going to happen. So what we have to do is make sure that when people are planning to develop these communities, make sure they have the infrastructure in place to be sustainable over periods of time. And we also have to look at our educational systems, because I believe we deal with a system that's an indoctrination versus an educational system. And we're indoctrinated with the Eurocentric thinking versus the Amistad curriculum that's been put in place, but it's still not in school districts. Because once a person has the knowledge of self, they will do that and know where they came from.
And I would say that there's a lot of money here. The question is having for us to have the power to force them to use the money. We know there are no activities after school. There was a young man in Rikers, and they asked him about the violence of Rikers, and he said, but there's nothing to do. I actually represented somebody who was trespassing on school property after 3:15. You want children on school property after 3:15. There should be activities for them afterwards, but as a country, we decided that they're not the priority. Ukraine is the priority, right? So it's a question of what our priorities are, and as a group, we're not going to do it as Mrs. Thomas said. It may not happen because we all have different fingerprints, even though we're all treated the same pretty much, right? All of us can be shot at 90 times and hit us 60 times, just because we have a certain color. But we have different fingerprints, so it makes it difficult to say it's going to be a global solution. However, it doesn't mean you can do your part, you do your part. One person adds to another person, adds to another person. But that is something we can address at another time. I appreciate the point. I gave you my card. We did have a couple of hours and you paid for dinner. So again, I want to thank everybody. Kind of close this up. That was really good. Time was perfect. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Be safe going home. That's interesting because we never said be safe. We said we'll see you later. So we'll see you later.
Zach Jackson, BASA News. Good night.
Finish, big brother. Zach, finish.